Well, hey, how you guys doing? Great to see you. Welcome. I can't believe we are in part 4 of our series, Enemy Mode and How to Escape It, How Time Flies. And we've been saying it's a series that's all about a brain state, not a state of mind, but an actual state of brain. It's something that's physiological, a state of brain, if you will, where the relational circuitry of the brain, that's largely a function of the right brain, the relational circuitry just kind of dims or goes offline a little bit, and it results in a kind of just blindness, a blindness to the people who are around us, to the relationships that are around us, a kind of detachment that we feel in a moment. And it turns out that there's actually this complex neurological network, this network of circuitry throughout my body and especially in my brain that works together to help us stay relationally connected and attuned to one another, to other people around us. And just incidentally, by the way, as a side note, that's exactly what we might expect to be really true, to be actually true, if there is a God who is one who could be described as love, that there is a God who is love, that there is a God who is relational to his core, who is unified and loves oneness and runs on love, and that he might design or create creatures in his image to run on love as he runs on love, that this might be exactly what we'd expect to find in our brains. These relational circuits, if you will, and when they're running as they're designed to run, we are in what might be called relational mode, or what I say is my right mind. I'm in my right mind, or I'm in relational mode. And what that means is our emotional and relational sensitivity is working. We're attuned or tuned into other people. We're able to feel their pain or their joy or what's going on with them. We read people well. We instinctively adapt to their emotional tone. Our mirror neurons in our brain adjust us to them, adjust ourselves to where they're coming from. We're able to empathize. There's something that neurologists talk about called theory of mind. These theory of mind systems, particularly in the right side of a brain, that allows us to develop this intuitive sense of where the other person's coming from, their point of view. And we're at the same time, we're on solid footing with our own personal identity, both our group identity and our personal individual identity. We feel safe, we feel known, we feel loved, we feel understood, we feel secure, even when the circumstances around us are not so much like that, or the people who are in front of us right now are not so much like that. We still feel rooted and stable in our own sense of identity, and we're able to regulate our emotions and our moods as well. And we might in that moment feel like stressed or anxious or angry or hurt or exhausted, but we're able to, even within that context, have this bigger perspective, and we're able to down-regulate difficult emotions and up-regulate positive emotions. We are, in a phrase, we are our best selves. In this mode, we are our best selves. But it turns out that this relational circuitry in the right brain is a little bit like the electrical circuitry in my kitchen. That when I have too many things on at one time, it throws the breaker. The circuit just turns off, everything shuts down, and it will all stay off until I go out and find that breaker and switch it back on. And similarly, there are any number of things like fear or anger or threats or aggression, exhaustion, alcohol, sleeplessness, grief, frustration, pain, physical pain and emotional pain that can cause the brain's relational circuitry to either dim or like throw a breaker, and suddenly, and it can happen very suddenly, I don't really feel like I want to connect to the people who are around me. I don't really feel connected to people. I probably don't really feel connected to God or even to myself. People who I may normally even like. They're like my closest people. These are the people I'm related to, or I'm married to, or I gave birth to, or like I live with or work with or play with. People become an annoyance, a bother, an inconvenience, an interruption. They become, as we've been saying in the series, objects or obstacles or opponents. And I am no longer in my right mind. I am in enemy mode. I'm in enemy mode, and generally speaking, I don't even know it. I don't even know it. I don't see it when the lights turn off. And in fact, because enemy mode is a right brain thing, and the left brain is the part of your brain that tells the story. When my right brain goes off, my left brain just starts telling a story, just makes up a story, usually a very self-justifying story that makes sense of the fact that I'm bothered, I just don't want to be interrupted, and the lights will stay off until I go find that breaker and flip it back on, turn the circuits back on. And we've been saying that there are different levels of this, or there are different types of enemy mode. There's simple enemy mode, which is really just basic, run-of-the-mill, everyday relational detachment and blindness. I'm just so focused, or I'm bothered by things, or I'm grumpy, or for whatever reason, I just don't really want to be around people. I don't want to care right now. And many of us, I've been talking to so many people during this series, coming up to me going, I can't believe how much of my day I spend in enemy mode. I can't believe how often I'm in enemy mode. And it is so easy to just be in simple enemy mode. My entire day, for some of us, like big chunks of our lives, just going like with blinders on. It is easy to begin to feel comfortable wearing simple enemy mode as a kind of body armor to protect us emotionally and keep people at bay. And that's bad enough. Simple enemy mode really is bad enough because it leaks into others. It creates enemy mode in the people who are around us. It lowers or lessens our joy. It limits our brain function, and it damages our relationships, even the relationships of the people closest to us, as we're in enemy mode day after day after day. But being in simple enemy mode also makes the other two types of enemy mode a lot more likely to happen. And those two types are stupid enemy mode and intelligent enemy mode. And stupid enemy mode, we've been saying, is just enemy mode turned hot, with like emotion and pain or anger or frustration. When that heat rises and my circuitry gets overloaded and my filters turn off, hence the name, stupid enemy mode, and I do and say things that are things that I will regret or work overtime to justify and tell myself a story to make sense of them. And then intelligent enemy mode, kind of like the opposite, is enemy mode turned cold. Turned ice cold, turned calculating and predatory, and the relational circuits in my brain that govern compassion and feeling the pain of the other person and caring about that pain, those circuits are off. However, other relational circuits like my attunement to you, my ability to notice what's going on with you, to see and to listen, to read you, and particularly to notice weakness, those circuits are turned on high alert, but they're being used for a predatory advantage, to win or hurt the other person. And God designed these circuits, these relational circuits, to help us connect, to help us build deep, deep relationships of attachment and oneness, to help us show compassion towards weakness, even momentary weakness, like, oh my goodness, I need to move towards that person, to treat others gently, to act like protectors, not predators. But in predatory enemy mode, in this intelligent enemy mode, I use all those same instincts, but I'm using them to win or to defeat the other person or hurt the other person, which brings us to this amazing story that Jesus told that illustrates all of this so well. It's a story about how we were created to live in relational mode, how we were designed and created for oneness and unity and compassion and connection with one another. And it's this famous, famous story that we began telling last week. And the setup, we said last week, is very important to how the story goes and the point of the story. The setup of the story goes like this. On one occasion, an expert in the law, and that's referring to religious law, their word for it was Torah, an expert in this religious law, meaning he's a person in the community who would have been respected. He's a recognized authority on interpreting and applying religious law to the everyday life of the community. So he's a respected person. He stood up to test Jesus, which could mean that he's trying to trap Jesus, in which case he's in intelligent enemy mode. He's in this predatory state of mind. Or perhaps it just means he wants to see what Jesus is made of. So here's Jesus, this really popular rabbi. Everybody's followed him. And he's like, okay, who is this guy? Like, does he know what he's doing? Can he handle it? Does he have his stuff, right? And so for whatever reason, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He stands up to test Jesus, and he asks a question. It's a great question. Teacher, he says, what must I do to inherit eternal life, the life of the future kingdom of God? How do I have that life? How do I assure that I am going to be there and experience that life? And Jesus responds, as he often did, and as rabbis in Jesus' day often did, with a question of his own. And he says, well, what's written in Torah? Like, you're the expert. How do you read it? How do you see that? How do you answer that question? And the expert responds with, hands down, the most famous line in all of the Hebrew scriptures from Deuteronomy 6. And he responds with this line, and it's so good. He says, well, here's how I read it. Love. That's it. That's the answer. It's love. It's loving the Lord our God with all our hearts and our souls and our strength and our mind. And then he adds something and he says, and he adds the second line also taken from Torah from Leviticus 19. He says, and it's loving your neighbor as yourself. The answer is all about love for God and love for the other person. And he adds this line that shifts the focus from the vertical to the horizontal, which Jesus did all the time. Jesus was famous for saying this, and maybe he had actually heard Jesus do this pairing right here. Like, these are two sides of the same coin. Loving God is demonstrated and authenticated by how I love the other person. And Jesus replies, A+, like gold stars, head of the class, perfect. You got it just right. Now do this. Now actually do that. And Jesus is addressing something that we all know about really well. It's sometimes called the knowing doing gap, right? And we have it in every facet of our lives. There are things like, I know, but I don't actually do. And there's this gap, right? It's the difference between what might be called cognition and our character. There's this gap. And he says, yeah, it's the doing. It's the doing of it that's really life, that's truly life. And if only we did, right? If only we just did that. If only that's what we did, this world would be a different place. Our lives would be different. Everything would be different. Jesus says, A+, gold stars, right answer. Do this and live. And the guy says, one more question. He wanted to justify himself, which is a key word in the story. He wanted to justify himself, and this is a clue that he might actually be in enemy mode, because self-justification, we said last week, is the number one obstacle to escaping enemy mode. He wants to tell himself a story that makes him righteous for whatever his point of view is. So he asked this question, who is my neighbor? Wanting to justify himself, he asked, so exactly who do I have to love like that? Do I have to be like attuned to and attached and care about and move towards? Who do I love like that? And very important, who do I not have to love like that in order to truly live? Because this man, just like all of us, he's a good guy. He's a respected guy. He's a religious guy. He's looked up to. But this guy, just like all of us, he has an us and he has some thems. He's got his people, the people that he identifies with, the people that he connects with, and he's got the people that he doesn't, and we all do. We all have that. We all have the people who we identify with, and they are the people who are like us. That's who we identify with. They think like us, they live like us, their lifestyle, their choices, maybe even their age and many other kind of socioeconomic factors, but they're the people who are like us, and they are the people who like us. And for all of our love for diversity, and we love diversity, we especially love diversity when all those diverse people are just like us. The diverse people who are nothing like us, we don't really care for their points of view, and they're just messing the whole thing up, right? But the people who are like us, we like them. Those are our people. And the research shows that we all show more love. We all show more love, more compassion, more interest, more benefit of the doubt, more grace, more consideration, more empathy. We all show more love to our people than to their people, those people wanting to justify himself. Who is my neighbor? Who is that and who's not my neighbor? And once again, Jesus doesn't answer the question. He's just famous for this. He starts to tell a story. I love it. It's this famous story that we read as a really nice, warm story, but no one was feeling the niceness of the story the day that Jesus told it. It's like the most disruptive, upsetting story he ever told. And here's his story that you're familiar with. In reply, Jesus said, so there's this man who's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he's attacked by bandits, which is like everyone knows, like no one's surprised because that road was notorious. It was infamous, treacherous. It's this 17-mile stretch winding down steeply from Jerusalem, which is up high, to Jericho, which is way down low, through caves and hideouts. It was a dangerous, dangerous road. Nobody travels it alone. And so everyone's like, yeah, see, that's why we don't travel alone. And so he's attacked, and they strip him of his clothes, which sounds weird, but clothes were valuable. So they take everything he's got, including his clothes, and they beat him, and they leave him naked there by the side of the road, half dead. And that's when fortune shines on our traveler. Oh, that's so bad, but man, good luck now, because two religious men, these are our people. If we're listening to the story, it's like, oh, these are our people. These are good people. And they're coming down the very same road. Oh, what fortune. And they're going to do the right thing, right? They're going to do the right thing because these are good guys, a priest and a Levite, both of whom happen to work in the temple system up in Jerusalem. And so both are religious men. They've been in Jerusalem working with like offering sacrifices and involved in the worship of God. And now they're leaving Jerusalem, going home, no doubt, and both of them are leaving worship. They're leaving the temple in enemy mode. They're perhaps just in simple enemy mode, and because of that, they see the man. They see him, but they don't feel. The relational circuitry that should cause them to feel incredible empathy for this person, the pain, the need that's in front of them. Instead, what they see is an inconvenience, a bother, an obstacle, maybe a threat. Maybe if we stop to help, we'll get attacked too. And so they do what you do with obstacles, what you and I do when people become obstacles. We avoid them. We try to get around them, to get past them, and no doubt as they walk on by, their left brains, their verbal logical explainers tell themselves a story that makes it totally okay that that's what they're doing. And the crowd is set up. It's perfect. They are set up for the third guest, the third traveler, if you will. And this is how these stories work. So the third traveler is going to be the point of the story. Who's he going to be? No doubt he's going to be one of us. He's going to be somebody I identify with, somebody who's going to do the right thing, a true Israelite, no doubt. And that's when Jesus just stirs the pot and he says, but a Samaritan. And here we said last week, it is so hard for us to really appreciate what must have happened in the crowd next, how disruptive and just uncomfortable and unenjoyable the story becomes, because when we hear the word Samaritan, we think good, right? And there were centuries and centuries, like about 6 centuries actually, longer than our country has even been a country. There were 6 centuries of intelligent enemy mode, like ethnic, racial, religious, political conflict and hate and war between these two groups of people, Jewish background people and Samaritan background people, and the feelings were mutual. It was not one-sided. Those are not our people. And as we said, intelligent enemy mode can be taught. It can be passed from generation to generation, and that's exactly what happens. Like racism and hate often gets transferred to the next generation, and moms and dads would raise their little ones from the earliest age to know those are not our people. Those are the opposites. Those are the enemies. Those people are unclean, they're dirty, and they're not really even people, but a Samaritan. And at this point, everybody in the crowd is just triggered. Everybody's just triggered. See, that's why we can't appreciate it, because nobody's triggered right now. Everybody's just triggered into enemy mode. It's like, oh, those people, I can't believe Jesus made that guy the third guy. Like what's he doing? But a Samaritan, as he traveled, he too came to where the man was. And like the other two, he saw him. They all three saw him. But something different happens inside of him. He took pity, or you could translate that, he felt compassion for him. Something happens inside him. It happens in his gut. In fact, that word that we translate pity or compassion, it's the Greek word. Luke is writing this story in Greek. We translate it into English. And the Greek word he translates, that we translate into pity or compassion, is the Greek word splanchnizomai. Splanchnizomai. Let me hear you say splanchnizomai out loud together. 1, 2, 3. Really, really good. That was perfect. Splanchnizomai. And it comes from the word splanknon, which is your intestines. That's your gut, your colon. That's that lower, that's that part of you. And he's feeling something down there. In other words, his right brain and his relational circuitry are fully functioning. Everything's working exactly like it's designed to work. And so there's attachment to this individual, instinctive, there's attunement, there's a kind of syncing up that happens when we're relationally attuned between that man's pain and what the Samaritan feels deep inside of him. In fact, there's a part of the brain called the insula or the insular cortex. It's right in the middle of the brain right there. And part of the role of the insular cortex or the insula is to trigger your body to actually feel your emotions, not just to think them, but to physically feel them. It's called the somatization, soma from the word body, to feel emotions, the somatization of emotions, particularly in your colon. Your enteric nervous system, which is sometimes called the second brain or the brain in your gut, there's this dense network of neurons that line the intestines and the stomach that actually has a direct line to your brain. And your insula's role is to actually trigger your body and your intestines to feel your emotions, to feel it deep down inside there and the emotions of other people, to read and to feel that the insula is considered to be the seat of empathy and compassion in the brain. And he sees this man, it's part of our relational circuitry. He sees this man terribly beaten, just in pain, almost dying, suffering terribly. And his brain and his body do what God created our relational circuits to do when we see other people in pain, even people who are not like us and don't like us. And what happens next in the story is so extreme. It really is ridiculous. It really is. What the Samaritan actually ends up doing for a person who in real life wouldn't even let him touch is like, ooh, what are you doing? Get away from me. That kind of thing. And the Samaritan knows that. What he ends up doing for this person who would consider him unclean is just extreme. So here's what happens next. He went to the man because he's tugged in that direction by his relational circuitry, and he bandaged up his wounds and he pours on oil and wine, which sounds a little weird, but that was actually about as good as medicine got at the time. That's actually helpful if you don't have anything else, but it's not all that helpful. We have better, but that's what he had. In other words, he's doing what he can do practically and immediately right then. This is what he has to bring healing, to bring some relief to the pain, to maybe help this guy live and survive this. There is no gap between his knowing and his doing, his cognition and his character. His right brain in the relational circuitry and his left brain, his ability to plan and figure it out and start making motions in that direction. They are synced up and working in concert with each other exactly like they're supposed to do, which is great. I mean, that's fantastic, right? I mean, that's really great. He's already doing way more than the guy in the ditch's so-called neighbors. But then Jesus just really pours it on. I mean, the guy doesn't dump and run. Here's what happens next. Then he puts the man on his own donkey. He brings him all the way down to Jericho. He's having to travel more slowly. Man's like on his donkey, brings him all the way down to Jericho, and he rents a room at the local inn, and he takes care of the guy all night long. I mean, what a sacrifice, what an inconvenience, right? And then he's not done. The next day, it's like, what? The next day, he gets up and he takes out 2 denarii. Now, a denarii was an average day's wage, and I looked it up. The average American annual salary right now is about $63,000, which comes out to, let's say, $250 a day, times 2, slaps $500 on the counter in front of the innkeeper and says, can you take care of him? Can you take care of, not my friend, not my neighbor, not even a stranger. Can you take care of my enemy for him? Just make sure he's okay. And by the way, if the bill starts to rack up, I'm through here all the time. You know me. I'm good for it. And he hands the guy basically a blank check in order to help take care of this man. It's like, what? What? The Samaritan, seriously, I've been thinking about this. The Samaritan does more for a potential enemy than most of us do for our closest friends. It really is true. Like, hey, John, can you help me move? Oh, this Saturday? Ooh. Honey, we have plans this Saturday, don't we? We don't? Oh. Like, seriously, for a potential enemy. And everybody knows it. Everybody in the crowd, everybody's feeling it, right? And it's so brilliant because Jesus answers this man's question about who he has to love and who he does not have to love in order to be truly alive by telling a story that intentionally triggers enemy mode in every single person who's listening in order to deal with it. Story time's over. Story time's over, and he turns to the expert who's like flustered. No one's liking this. Jesus gets bad reviews on Yelp tonight. After this story, he's like, hated that. And then Jesus does something that no one in his audience will live long enough to appreciate. He redefined neighbor and enemy. He redefined us and them. He redefined who you have to love and who you think you don't have to love for every generation that would follow. He erased the boundary lines, and all of those boundary lines are in this story. Ethnicity and religion and nationalism and politics and lifestyle and who likes us and who's like us. And he erases the boundary lines. He expands it beyond even the existing at the time boundaries of Scripture itself. And he does it all with one perfectly set up, perfectly timed, perfectly crafted, perfectly delivered question. A question that ended up shaping and defining the Jesus movement for centuries. A question that actually ended up shaping Western civilization for the past 2,000 years, wherever the Jesus movement has taken root. And it's an annoying question. It's an annoying question because we all know the answer to the question. And here it is. So which of these three? You asked me a good question. It's a good question. So which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of robbers? Who was the neighbor? Which one was the neighbor to a man who so needed a neighbor who would love him, who would stop and help him? Which of the three chose to be a neighbor, not an enemy that day? And the implication behind the question is a little like this. The implication behind the question is, which of these three loved God with all his heart and soul and mind and strength by loving not a neighbor as himself, in fact, not even a stranger as himself, but by loving an enemy as himself? Which of the three? The guy can't even bring himself to say it. He can't say the S word. It's like, well, I suppose the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus smiles. He nods and looks around at the crowd, frustrated, looking daggers at him. And he says for the second time, so go and do that. Go and do likewise. You want to participate in God's kingdom, the life of the kingdom here and now? Then and right here, right now, you want to live in sync with God and with the life of the age to come? You want that? Then you just be the Samaritan. You be the Samaritan. And what really, really strikes me about this story as I've been reading it and reflecting on it is the priest and the Levite who should be in relational mode. I mean, they're coming from worshiping God, for crying out loud, and it is their fellow countrymen in the ditch. They should see their fellow Israelite in need and feel this gut-wrenching, insular, intrinsic nervous system kind of response, this gut-wrenching concern for the human being in front of them. They're in simple enemy mode. And they walk past the object, the inconvenience, the obstacle in the road. But the Samaritan, who, as we said last week, he really should be in intelligent enemy mode. I mean, he should just be triggered just by seeing the man. He's not. Not at all. His whole brain, His whole brain, right brain and left brain, dialed in, fully alert, and so he loves a person who would not have called himself his neighbor. And here's the thing, he doesn't seem to have to work himself up to it. He doesn't have to seem to bring himself up to this point. It's not like he walks past the guy and then kind of feels bad and he turns around. It's like, oh, should I not? Having this inner debate, well, if he was awake, he probably wouldn't even let me touch him. Why would I? Then he finally goes back and, okay, I'll try to help you. No, the implication of the story is actually that there's something just automatic and instinctive and immediate in his response to a person who's in pain in front of him. Like his whole brain and all of these relational circuits, they're on, and he's not in enemy mode. He's not in enemy mode like the others, nor is he triggered into enemy mode by seeing a Jewish man in the ditch. He is in full-on relational mode. His inner experience and relational circuitry, brain and body, responding just like God designed us all to go through our days, experiencing and responding. And this is the difference between knowing and doing. This is actually the difference between cognition and our character. In fact, character has been described as our embedded automatic response. That's our character. There are the things we talk ourselves into and the things we know we do and willpower, and all those are great. But then there's our embedded automatic responses to our experiences and environment, to our stimuli. Before our conscious mind gets a chance to catch up and become aware of them, they are our gut reactions and first options for response. That's our character. Now, this doesn't mean that things like thinking and choosing and willpower are irrelevant. It's just that they're all further downstream than our character. In fact, as we said in week 2, if you were here, everything that happens in the brain starts at the base of the brain, works its way up through the right side of the brain, crosses over in the prefrontal cortex behind your eyeballs, and then works its way back on the left side of the brain. And the right side of the brain, therefore, is all preconscious thought. It all happens before we have a chance to think about it, and it runs faster than our conscious thoughts than the left side of our brain. So thinking and choosing and willpower are all fantastic. They're all important. It's just that they're further downstream than the process of our character, which is initially and largely this right brain, instinctive, encoded way of reacting and responding to the world because of the experiences that have been encoded in our right brain. And the Samaritan in Jesus' story, he has this. He has character, not just cognition. He has character. He's instinctively inclined towards compassion. He's in relational mode before he sees the guy. And he's in relational mode and stays there the entire time. Jesus is like, hey, you want to be really alive? Seriously alive? You want to be alive just now and also forevermore? You want to participate in the life of the kingdom of God? Well, you just do that. You be like that guy. Which raises a question. How? How do we do that? How do we keep those relational circuits on when they flip off seemingly so easy? How do I stay in my right mind? How do I stay in relational mode? And how can I make this more and more of my automatic response, my character? And so we've been saying this in this series that really the first step is just start recognizing this, just to notice it when I see it, and especially when I'm in it, to see myself in enemy mode. And then we said last week, man, once you see it, it's so damaging, you want to get out of it as quickly as possible. You want to escape it quickly. And last week we talked about this simple, and I said overly simplified, 4-step process to escape enemy mode. And we use this acronym REST that is not a linear step-by-step thing. It's all just concurrent. These are 4 things that happen where we said the R is, what was it? Relax, right? Relax your body, breathe, release that stress. While I'm E, engaging my right brain, saying, hey, get tuned in, stay tuned. And I'm the S, smiling, relaxing. Okay, and I'm talking to myself about it the whole time, and to God, and maybe other people around me if they know what in the world that might be that I'm talking about. I'm acknowledging it. I'm bringing left brain and right brain together. That's the rest model of just escaping it quickly. And then step 3 is to try to stay there. As best I can, I will never always be there. I will never be able to fully stay there, but to stay relational, to be the Samaritan as much as I possibly can. And so as we wind down today, I want to take the E of rest, the engage your right brain, and I want to just kind of blow it up a little bit, expand on it, zoom in on it, because simply put, when I'm in my right mind, when I'm engaging my right brain, I care. I care. And I'm engaged, I have compassion, I'm attuned, I'm feeling, I'm reading, I'm feeling where other people are coming from. So what does it mean to engage my right brain? What is the E? How do I do that? Again, I've got an acronym. So I've got another one of these, like a checklist to mentally run through. And just like the REST acronym, it's not linear, it's not one step after the other, it's concurrently, it's start anywhere, just jump in and do these 4 things. It's the acronym CARE, and the C stands for curiosity. Curiosity, like, hey, here's a bunch of human beings with a story, with pain and joy of their own. Curiosity wants to understand not to condemn or judge or dismiss or attack, and in fact, the crazier they're being, the more curious I am. In fact, we talked about this in a few series in times past. Maybe you remember this, the ladder of inference. I realize we haven't talked about that in a while, and that should be like every couple of years on repeat because it's so helpful. Like they're at the top of they have a story that justifies as crazy as they're being. I'm fascinated. I got to hear that. That is one crazy story. How can I find out what they have? And curiosity says this. They have a story. I wonder what their story is. They have a story that explains this. I wonder what their story is. In fact, I want us to say that out loud together. Will you say that with me? They have a story. I wonder what their story is. One more time. Hey, they have, I wonder what that is. They have a story. And of course, I can be curious without actually asking them. I can wonder that without invading their privacy. I can be curious about the difficult people, the crazy people, the enemies in my life. I can be curious about total strangers while I'm driving my car and walking through the grocery store. And since we're so often in enemy mode with the people who are closest to us, since we're most often in enemy mode with the people who are closest to us, I can fire up my relational circuits by stirring up my curiosity with them as well. Before I walk into that meeting, before we're going to hang out, before I walk into the house after a day's work where I've been in simple enemy mode, I can stir up my curiosity. I'm like, hey, I wonder what I'll be walking. I wonder what people's stories are that will explain what I'm walking into. Like, I wonder how their day was. I wonder how she's feeling, how he's doing. I wonder what they're up against right now. I wonder what brings them joy. I wonder. And curiosity, when our relational circuits are on, means this. I can feel curious about what people around me might be thinking or feeling or what their story is. And when my relational circuits are off, I do not feel curious about other people, nor do I want to or care. Whatever, don't want to hear it, don't want to know the story. When my relational circuits are on, I care. And what's the C stand for? Curiosity. I'm curious. And then the A is appreciation, gratitude. In fact, this is one of the best ways to flip the breaker of my relational circuits. Now, real quick on this. I do not mean, when I say appreciation, I do not mean trying to drum up some feelings of gratitude or thankfulness for the person in front of me who's triggering me, or for the situation that's triggering me. I am not talking about drumming that kind of appreciation up, though if you can do it, good on you. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about grateful, joyful memories that are already encoded in the right brain, emotionally encoded, like special moments. It's just like memories of people and wonderful experiences and things, people I'm closest to with sights and sounds and smells and tastes. Things that, and here's the key, spark a smile. Things that actually spark a smile. Now, here's why this is key. Because there are a lot of like broad and very generalized things that we should be grateful for. In fact, if I asked you all to name 5 things that you're grateful for, most of us would name probably the same 5 things-ish. We would say things like, well, I'm really grateful for my family, or I'm really grateful for my friends, or I'm grateful for my job. If you have a job and you're grateful for your job, like, I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for my church. A lot of people say that. Man, I'm grateful for my health. If you know anything about world history, you might say, I'm grateful that I live in America in the 21st century. I mean, we got our problems, but we kind of won the jackpot. Like, I'm grateful that it's here and not somewhere else or not another time. So, and those are all great, by the way. Those are great things to be grateful for, and maybe you're like, I should feel grateful for them. But if they don't actually spark a smile, I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm not talking about those generalized kind of things. This is like my happy place. This is like the stuff when I talk about it, it just it brings a smile. Those memories, those moments, those people, those connections, it's like relational, and it brings a smile and it lifts my emotions. Some of you had that experience just talking about where you like to go to get away. It's like, that brings a smile. So maybe I pull out my phone and I look at some pictures of some people who are close to me that I love so much, and I just remind myself of that, or I just go there in my mind, and just the process of doing that, of cycling through that for even a few minutes, opening up those joyful memories, like those files, if you will, starts a chain reaction in our brains and our bodies that we respond to as if we are reliving the moment itself. In fact, a gratitude relived can actually be better than the first time around because the way the brain packages memories. And I'm just kind of going through those, and I'm appreciating, I'm feeling grateful. And this practice turns on and keeps on the relational circuits of our right brain. Appreciation. When my relational circuits are on, here's how I know. I can feel appreciation. I can feel appreciation in my thoughts and in my body. I remember things that I enjoy, maybe about the people who are close to me that I'm in enemy mode with, or I feel grateful for. I notice good things to enjoy when my relational circuits are on, but when my relational circuits are off, I do not feel appreciation. Nor do I want to or care to. I might even be annoyed that you just suggested it. I am focused on what bothers me, what annoys, what tempts, what hurts, and what frustrates me. But when my relational circuits are on, I care. And what's the C? It's curiosity. And what's the A? Appreciation. And then there's the R. The R is a word called resonance. Resonance. Now this one goes a little bit deeper. It involves this thing called attunement that I've been talking about. My ability to tune in with the people who are around me, to read the room, to read the vibe, to read the person. It involves something that neuropsychologists and neuroscientists refer to as theory of mind. Theory of mind is these brain systems, my brain's ability to construct this intuitive theory. And they call it theory because I never know what's going on in your mind. It's my theory. It's this working theory that I have of what's going on in the other brain, in the other mind. And at a right brain level, it's preconscious. So my left brain's always doing this, like telling the story of like where you're coming from and what you're trying to do. That's left brain stuff. On a right brain level, it's this preconscious sense that I have. And it's my willingness to let myself feel that. To let my insula feel what you're feeling, actually share your feelings. It's what the Apostle Paul once referred to as rejoicing when others rejoice. And maybe I really don't feel that joyful, and I don't have that much to be joyful about, but you're rejoicing. And I feel your joy, and I allow myself to feel it with you and share it, or vice versa, to mourn with those who mourn. Because you're brokenhearted, and you just went through something, and it's really not my grief, but it's your grief. And now I'm sharing it, and I feel that with you and for you. It's resonance. It's resonance. It's my ability, my willingness to attune to you, to tune into you, to adapt myself to where you're coming from. And when my relational circuits are on, I sense that. I just sense where other people are coming from. I may be wrong, by the way. It is just a theory. I'm attuned to them. I'm empathizing with their pain and joy. I adjust myself to them very naturally, the mirror neurons in my brain. But when my relational circuits are off, I don't feel that, nor do I want to or care. I don't care. I may have an assumption about where you're coming from, what you're trying to do, and my assumptions are probably negative. But when my relational circuits are on, I care. I care. And what's the R stand for? It's resonance. There's curiosity, there's appreciation, there's a kind of resonance. And the I, simply put, is eye contact. Eye contact, it's that face-to-face thing. Did you know your brain's circuitry, that relational circuitry, is specifically and particularly designed to read and attune to and even mirror or reflect back another human face? It's almost like you were created to love other people. Another human face and the countenance on their face. And when my relational circuits are on, I'm looking at people in the eyes. I'm looking at them in the face. I'm tuning into their faces, their expressions, their countenance, the furrow in their eyebrows or the light in their eyes or the smile or the frown. I'm reading into which is, of course, part of resonance, of that empathy part. It's part of curiosity because like the REST, these all work in concert with one another. I'm tuned into their face and I'm reading and I'm responding and I'm tuned, I'm curious and so forth. And when my relational circuits are on, I look at, here, let's throw that up there. When my relational circuits are on, I look at people's faces and I look at their eyes and I tune into them. But when my relational circuits are off, and you know this feeling, I have no desire to attune to anybody else's face. I avoid contact. I don't even want to look at people that I normally actually love. And step 3 is, as best as I can, and I can't always do it, I'll never be 100% successful, I just want to stay in my right mind. I want to stay in relational mode, and when I'm in relational mode like the Samaritan, I care. I care. Curiosity, appreciation, resonance, and eye contact. So your homework this week, and we've been giving you homework every week, is just to care. That's it. Just to care. Just to stay curious. I'm just going to try to stir up my curiosity, to wonder what people are like. I wonder what their story is, to go to happy place memories that bring a smile, and to leverage appreciation to turn on my relational circuits, to read and like resonate and attune to other people, and to actually look at them, to keep my relational circuits on, and then just repeat it as necessary. Over and over, repeat as necessary all week long, and stay in my right mind. But I know what you're asking. Because this is like some of you have just been frustrated about this the entire series. And here's the question. What about everybody else? I mean, really, like I'm trying to be Mr. Nice Guy or Miss Nice Guy and lady here, and I'm trying to stay like, oh, won't be in enemy mode. What about them? I mean, am I just a doormat now? What if they actually are my enemy? I mean, seriously, what if they are? And what if, here's a good question, what if my gripe is legit? I mean, I'm trying to escape enemy mode and because I've been triggered, but what if I should be triggered? What if the issue or the injustice or the thing that's triggered me is legit and I should be? And so what's the deal, John? Am I supposed to just smile? So we're going to smile now. Relax, I'm breathing, I'm smiling. So I'm supposed to just smile and like grin and bear it? What am I just supposed to sweep it all under a rug, right? And the answer is no. You're not supposed to sweep it under a rug. You're not supposed to grin and bear it. You're supposed to come back next week for part 5 of Enemy Mode, and I sure hope you will. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, as I ask those questions, I just know, as much as this series is fun, that's where some of the rubber meets the road, and that's where some of us are, like real serious issues and struggles with human beings that we don't know how to manage, we don't know what to do with them, and this might even feel like a bit of fluff and a bit of feel-good pop psychology. So I just pray for us all, because we're all in different places. As I've been praying throughout this series, would you please give us the ears to hear what we needed to hear? Would you give us the eyes to see ourselves and to see reality and see truth, including who you are? Would you give us just the grace and the peace and the power we need to move forward, the wisdom to know what that next step is, and the courage to actually do it? And I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, as we wind down real quick, I just wanted to say, if you want to share this with somebody, and a lot of you have been sharing this, like, oh, I've got people who need this. You can do that on, be careful how you share it though. Seriously, on our YouTube channel at ourterranova.com, and hey, invite them to watch next week, or if they're in the area, invite them to come with you. We would love to get those Connect cards from you that Lyle mentioned earlier, and so if you started on that, if you take a second right now and just finish filling that out, we'd love to hear from you, just wherever you're from. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better. We will not sell your information to anybody, so feel comfortable and safe letting us know as much about yourself as you will, and how we can be praying for you this week. You can drop these Connect cards in the offering basket. By the way, we ended up giving, we did this $2 per card thing last week and ended up giving $500 to our next door neighbors, which was awesome. That was fun. Speaking of generosity, you can drop your offering envelopes in those offering baskets on the way out. You can give online and you can give on the app. And since we're looking to raise $21,000 for Kids Feeding Kids, you can actually do that outside, or you can just scan this QR code on this flyer and you can help us buy all of those meals for orphans in Zambia. That's going to be awesome. And then, hey, don't forget, next week is Mother's Day. It's going to be, hey, what a fantastic looking family. Mother's Day is coming up in a couple weeks, and that's going to be a blast, so I hope you come back and join us for that. Going to be a lot of fun. God bless you guys. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you back next week for the series finale of Enemy Mode, How to Escape It, and the answer to all your questions.